everybody. I appreciate the chance to speak at LTDC today. I'm Jon Horvick. I'm a THM Research. I know many of you in the room here, we've worked with many of you individually or with the agencies or organizations that you're affiliated with, but just real quickly, DHM, we've been in business for about 30 years. We've been measuring Oregonians' values, attitudes, and beliefs quantitatively and qualitatively with surveys and focus groups throughout that time. We're a public policy firm. We focus on public policy issues. And we're independent and nonpartisan. That's real important to our work. Our specialty areas include land use planning, transportation, natural resources, ballot measures, and all sorts of other voter issues that touch what we're talking on today. And our clients, we've worked with many, many cities and counties throughout the state, dealing directly with land use issues or issues related to them. With Metro, TriMet, Salem, Kaiser Transit, ODOT, OFRI, ONC counties, League of Oregon Cities, Port of Portland, many, many, many others. So that's the types of folks that we tend to work with. So what I'm going to share today is some background about Oregonians' values and beliefs as it relates to land use planning. But I'm going to start by giving some high-level information and some opinion data that we have about Oregonians' attitudes towards what's happening in the state, their understanding of public issues that are happening, and some challenges that we're all dealing with as public opinion makers in the state. Things are gloomy out there, and they have been for a while. We've been asking this question: is Oregon headed in the right direction, or are things pretty much off on the wrong track? We've been asking this question for a long time now. Here's a chart that goes back to 1997. You can see in the late 1990s, this is the right track numbers, that right track numbers would be in the 50s or the 60s. When the economy was doing well, Oregonians told us that things were pretty much heading in the right direction. And then comes the election of 2000, September 11th, and the doldrums of the economy since. Basically, since 2002, 2001, we've been stuck with right track numbers around 40%. Haven't moved really at all. It says a lot, I think, about where we've been and sort of the challenges about public policy right now. A lot of this, of course, is driven by the economy. I just want to give you a few data points on public opinion, but just some things to keep in mind. You know, adjusted for inflation, the median household income for most Oregonians declined from 2007 to 2010. Nationally, personal wealth declined 35% from 2005 to 2010. These are the most recent numbers that I have. And the most recent unemployment numbers came out this last week. In Oregon, it's down to 7.5%, which is the lowest it's been in a number of years. And fortunately, it's falling, but still, that's quite a high, historically high level of unemployment. And this bears out in Oregonians' attitudes about their personal finances. So here's a question we've been asking for the last 4 years for work we do for Oregon Public Broadcasting. Just how worried are you about your personal financial situation? Between 65 and 71% for the last 2 years or so told us that they're somewhat or very worried about it. There's been very little movement. Every now and then we get hope that the economy is improving. We see some real signs that it is, but Oregonians tell us that they're not feeling it yet. So when we think about public policy, we have to keep in context the way Oregonians are feeling about their personal finances, their personal security, and their attitudes about the state. Now, the negativity and skepticism is not only driven by the economy, but when we do qualitative work across the state, when we sit down with everyday people, everyday voters around the table for focus groups and ask them, what are they worried about? What are the issues? Why are they frustrated with government? And here are the things that they tell us. We're just not getting things done. There's too much partisan gridlock. We have the wrong priorities. You know, with the right priorities that are contested, but they certainly tell us a lot that we have the wrong ones. That we're not innovative, we're not creative. We're too short-term focused. We don't think long-term, we don't think comprehensive. Our laws are toothless. There's frustration and reduction of services. Negative campaigning, especially in election season, just drives people crazy. Really, really frustrates them and makes them think worse about their government. And waste and inefficiency. Now, we have some data on waste. This is going to pop up like this apparently. Some data on waste and inefficiency and what Oregonians mean when they say that. So we frequently ask this question in surveys: how many cents out of every dollar of the state spends you feel is wasted? On average, they tell us 44 cents out of every dollar is wasted. And how many cents out of every dollar that the state spends you feel benefits your daily life? Only 30%. So on average, Oregonians think more money out of every dollar is wasted than spent with time. Now we talk a lot about what people know about government, but here we quantify it. These are questions we ask regularly in our surveys. These are the most recent numbers. 49% of Oregonians do not know how many U.S. senators represent the state.
There you go.
Just about a third can mention their names. 51% cannot name the three branches of government. And Oregonians are more likely to say that property taxes pay for state services than internet. So definitely, any public policy we deal with, but land use included, you have to keep in context that Oregonians are still feeling pretty negative about the direction of the state. They're very anxious about their personal financial situation. And many of them don't know the basics of how government works. There's also, we're competing against a ton of other issues. Just the one I put together. You know, you'll see LCDC, I put that in red. It's on there. But you're competing against a ton of other issues. So, 50% don't know we have 2 U.S. senators, but that's not good. We are trying to compete against a lot of other information, a lot of other distractions that are out there. But what are the good news? What do Oregonians most value about this state? Now this, we could ask it quantitatively, and we do from time to time, and we certainly talk about it in our focus groups. And overwhelmingly, these are the issues that come up over and over again. Oregonians love outdoor recreation, the proximity and variety that we have here. The natural beauty, open spaces, farmlands, and forests. We take great pride in these. Of course, they love the climate. Now, Portlanders love the climate, as do the folks in Bend. They're very different, but they're choosing to be here because of the weather that we have. Water and air quality, and a sense of community and neighborliness. So when you think about land use planning, it's real important to talk about the benefits of it around these issues that Oregonians care about. Okay? Draw the connections for them. Because they don't tell us that they love land use planning, okay? But they tell us that they love these things, and drawing the connections for them are real important. In a survey we did about 9 months ago for the state, we gave our survey respondents a list of priorities and told us to tell us how much of a priority they are to them. Not surprisingly, economy and jobs comes up number 1. And just to read this chart, 80% tell us that should be a priority for the state to deal with in the next 10 years. Then we asked how likely that the state will be able to accomplish its goals in the next 10 years. Just 38% tell us that they're confident that we can advance on that area. So economy and jobs, number 1. Good government, number 2. Not very confident that we'll get there. Public safety, then health and the environment. And healthy people and livable communities fall a little bit more towards the bottom, but still people are telling us, majority of people are telling us that they're urgent or high priorities for the state. There will also be areas that Oregonians tell us that they're most confident we can accomplish. The survey we did about 6 months ago for OPB had to deal with environmental issues, and here are some statewide results. We asked them what are the environmental issues that they're most concerned about. The quality of your drinking water comes at number 1, and right B2 is the health of local rivers, streams, and lakes. Water issues in Oregon are paramount. That's the environmental issue that comes up on top in survey after survey that we do. Closely followed is air quality. And then more towards the bottom, industrial pollution, the health of forests, and agricultural pollution. Now some of these are interrelated, of course, but when asked to sort them out for us, this is the way Oregonians tell us that it's what they're concerned about. All right, so that's just some background, high-level stuff about Oregonians' values and beliefs and some of the challenges we face. We had an opportunity this last week to put a survey in the field dealing with land use issues. I'm going to go over some of the results. At DHM, every time we do a telephone survey, we ask people if they want to participate in some follow-up surveys and focus groups, and we go back to them from time to time. All these participants are recruited at random, and the quotas are, we set quotas when we do surveys to make sure that it's representative of the state on key demographic issues. So this is a good representation of Oregonians on some issues right now. We had 276 folks complete it, which has about 6% margin there. So we started the survey by asking this question. We didn't want to ask directly about LCDC out of the gate or land use planning, but I thought, well, what would be interesting for this presentation? And so we looked back, and being pollsters like we are and testing ballot measure issues a lot, we looked at the Measure 10, 1976, which was the first attempt to repeal LCDC, and asked, I'll just read it for you. The measure in 1976 repeals Oregon statutes adopting state coordination and control of land use planning, statewide land use goals and guidelines, and state agency review of local comprehensive plans and land use decisions, repeals statutes creating the Land Use Conservation and Development Commission and the Department of Land Conservation and Department of Land Conservation and Development. This was defeated 1976, 39 to 61. Where are Oregonians today? Right now, 49% tell us they would oppose such a measure, 19% would support, and a big chunk of folks would say they don't know. So definitely leaning towards oppose, right? They would not support something like this, but a big chunk of folks who still are unsure. Well, why would they oppose? We had a follow-up question where people could write in some answers. I just chose a few choice quotes. Such trashing of Oregon's land use and the legacy passed on to us from generations of work, planning, forethought, and sacrifice would make a few developers shamefully wealthy, while leaving the rest of us and future Oregonians immensely impoverished. Repealing these agencies would allow land use to be decided by special interests in the interest of profit rather than balancing what's best for communities and the environment. And I like this one just simply.
I repeat myself.
So why did they tell us they would support repeal? And these are the folks who would have supported repeal. Current systems place too much power in the hands of too few people in Salem. Smaller communities are stressed out trying to comply with stupid rules that many times do not work for the community, all of which causes heavy financial burdens and inflate land values. I believe the government is abusing the regulatory ability to impose land use regulations. It appears that in some instances, small groups can lobby for special interest development while the rest of the state can forget having a chance to develop. And the county and state have been interfering in the family's attempts to build on my parents' 37-acre farmland, despite the fact that we want to build on the property to preserve it as forest farmland. In the words of everyday Oregonians. So then we asked, just how familiar are you with LCDC? So you can see here a majority, 60, or what is that, 58% say they're actually familiar or not at all familiar. You know, not surprisingly, 18 to 34-year-olds tell us that they're least familiar. 80% tell us that they're not too or not at all. Older residents are more familiar. This was interesting to me. Democrats, 54% of Democrats tell us that they're somewhat or very familiar, while 79% of Republicans tell us that they're not familiar. Okay. For those who told us that they were at least somewhat familiar with LCDC, so just give them a grade. How you doing? Now, you might say GPA of 2.0, not very good, certainly don't want that in your own report card. Now keep in mind, this is in the context of a public that is very negative towards government right now. Democrats give LCDC the highest grades, by party, Republicans the lowest, independents in between. By area of the state, Tri-County and Willamette Valley tend to grade LCDC higher than folks in the rest of the state. So we asked this question if they would support additional protections for natural areas. 53% said they would. The majority of Oregonians said they would support additional protections for natural areas. That kind of breaks down the way you probably expect, but Democrats, younger residents, and those in the Tri-County are the most likely to support additional protections. Republicans, and those 55 and older are the least. Republicans, a majority of Republicans said that they would not support additional protections for natural areas. I wanted to get a sense of just what Oregonians think is going to happen with the state's population going forward. So we asked them to estimate how much the population will grow in the next 20 years. You can see sort of the modal number there, 34%, told us it would increase by 250,000 to 500,000. I think state projections are about 600,000, so they're not too far off. They may be a little low, but not too far off. And we asked them to tell us how concerned are they about population growth, about issues related to population growth. And here they used a scale. And the orange bars represent very concerned and somewhat concerned. The green, not too concerned and not at all concerned. So what are they concerned about? And number one is increased pollution. That could come in different forms. We didn't ask them what types of pollutions, but increased pollution. Followed by increased traffic congestion. Loss of wildlife. Loss of open space for recreation. All these have the majorities telling us that they're concerned. Increased urban sprawl. Loss of farmland, getting a little bit lower. Increased increased housing costs. Loss of Oregon social and cultural identity. That one surprised me a little bit, because when we do qualitative work, everyday folks, when they talk about what they value about Oregon, what they personally value, what they personally take interest in, they take a lot of personal pride, but ranked against these other ones. But less than half of Oregonians told us that they're somewhat very concerned about the loss of Oregon's social and cultural identity. And increased population density also fell to the bottom. So it's not density necessarily, density per se that they're telling us that they're concerned about, as much as the issues that they associate with density, pollution, traffic congestion, etc. And we asked them to rate some priorities for land use planning. We told them to use a scale again from a high priority, medium priority, those are our orange bars, to low priority or not a priority at all, which is our green bars. So we get a sense here of what Oregonians put their most and highest value on. And here, the highest was protecting wildlife habitat. That should be number one. Followed right behind, though, by protecting private property rights. Protecting farmland from development. And in the middle here, reducing greenhouse gas emissions. But note that the orange bars, if we add them up, we get what, 72% tell us that that should be at least a medium priority, reducing greenhouse gases. Next, promoting economic development. So promoting economic development fell behind some of these other ones. It fell behind reducing greenhouse gas, protecting farmland, protecting wildlife habitat. Preventing urban sprawl, protecting open space, and preserving Oregon's social and cultural identity. Let's give a sense of where Oregonians put their values and priorities around these issues. So we close the survey with this quote from Governor Tom McCall that he gave in a speech to the legislature. I think many of you know this quote, speaking in favor of Senate Bill 100, and I'll just read it out loud. When I read it, try to imagine Tom McCall saying it. There is a shameless threat to our environment and to the whole quality of life. Unfettered despoiling of the land, sagebrush subdivision, coastal condominia, and the ravenous rampage of suburbia in the Willamette Valley all threaten to mock Oregon's status as the environmental model for the nation. We are dismayed that we have not stopped misuse of the land, our most valuable, finite natural resource. Umbrage of blatant disrespect for sound planning is taken not only at Salem. Less than a month ago, the Jefferson County Commissioners appealed to me for a moratorium on a subdivision because the speculators had outrun local capacity for rational control. We are in dire need of a state land use policy. New subdivision laws, new standards for planning and zoning by cities and counties. The interests of Oregon for today and in the future must be protected from grasping wastrels of land. We must respect another truism, that unlimited and unregulated growth leads inexorably to a lower quality of life. So we presented this quote to them and asked the question, how true is this today? You can see that 78% told us that some were very accurate still today. And we asked them just for any comments about why they gave their answers, and here are just a few quotes that they gave us. The threats McCall described remain and are largely held off by Oregon land use planning structure and array of environmental policies and regulations. To the negative manifestations of poor land use, I would now add the production of greenhouse gases. Governor McCall expresses the situation very eloquently and persuasively. After 40 years, Oregon is doing quite well with land use planning. However, it would not hurt to review statutes that determine if they have done what they originally wanted to do. And the purple prose aside, I believe the measures advocated by Tom McCall have succeeded exactly in doing what he hoped. Curb irresponsible development. It may in some sense have gone a bit too far in that direction, but the balance will evolve over time. So those are where Oregonians are right now on some key issues. So high level, what they're feeling about their government, the frustrations that they're having, and some specific data on their values towards land use planning in Oregon.